Hey, all, happy Friday. Kids are going to be out of school next week, so they're real excited about this Friday. This is a bonus Friday, but wanted to continue the conversation about the reality matrix, discussing the game or the trap or the school. That's the three that we hear the most, and different analogies for it. This image here is based on a Star Trek episode. You might remember in Next Generation that they came across this game, and this stupid game was like a drug, and it was super addicting, and the whole crew was just getting addicted to it, and they didn't want to do anything else except play this addicting game. And I thought that was an inappropriate image because there's an element to this reality of whether you want to view it as a game or a trap, a soul trap, or a school. I've pushed the trap idea away, but not entirely. I think there's components of the trap that have proven themselves to be true. I mean, there's the whole idea of loosh or some kind of entity that wants our attention mixed with emotion, whatnot. That there's this desire to draw that out of us. This vying for our attention is definitely a component of reality. Just based on the experiences I've had and seen, I'd say that's part of it. So, taking it to its extreme, you would say this whole place is nothing but a trap for that purpose, and that's an old philosophy, of course. I wanted to look for some old examples of this idea that we are being trapped, and old and new. So, I found, of course, this Star Trek episode which talks about the game, where the game is to suck people in and trap them in this illusion. In the Bible, I was thinking Samson and Delilah, where Delilah was basically the soul trap for Samson. He just kind of lost his mind when he came to Delilah. Any sort of addiction could be considered a trap too, whether it be drugs or sex or whatever. But in the Bible, I'd say the Samson and Delilah is a good example of somebody getting lured in and deceived by some sort of trap. You got the Pied Piper, who could get the children or the rats to follow him by playing the flute there. You got these sirens, that would call the sailors and just draw them in, trap them. And this idea that reality tries to draw us in and kind of pull us into this illusion fits very well with Quantum of Conscious Matt. He talks about reality being a breadcrumb reality. So the false reality keeps dropping breadcrumbs for you to keep pursuing. Back in around 2008, that's when I first became aware that reality was just not exactly the presentation that I was being taught or influenced to believe it was. The major news media was not convincing anymore. Even the stories in school, everything became suspect to question, and that led me down the old truther pathway, the truther and conspiracy road, where the more I investigated different conspiracies, the more evidence I found for their truth to be, reinforced, and that Matt has called the breadcrumbs that reality gives you. So, of course, whatever conspiracy you want to follow, whether it be mud floods or splat turf or whatever you want to pursue conspiracy-wise, reality has a desire to give you a little bit more information, but never fully answer the questions, because reality itself is interested in keeping your focus, your attention, and your engagement on whatever on it on anything in reality, that it can just draw you down. If it can pull you down a rabbit hole, it definitely wants to pull you down a rabbit hole. And I find that to be a very original idea in terms of philosophy, that reality itself is designed to draw us into it and to pull our attention. And it'll always give us supporting evidence. It'll give you more. So even the Mandela effect, which I thought was the most profound and mind-blowing truth about reality that I'd ever discovered, reality itself would even use that to draw me in and others in, just with its breadcrumbs, to just keep giving us a little bit more, just to keep us going down that path. It wants your attention. Reality wants your engagement. Now, does that mean that reality itself is one big trap, or is that just a feature of the game? The game is designed to figure out how to keep us engaged in the game, to keep us playing the game. This is something Bethesda hasn't figured out how to do yet, but reality has gotten very good at keeping the players engaged in the game of reality. Of course, I mentioned that drugs are a good trap too in this reality. It's like Pineapple Express movie gives a good example of a funny example of drugs and the stupidity of it. This is a picture of the lotus flower in is it Odyssey? Homer, the poem, where the sailors land on that island and they get drawn into the few that get off the ship. They get sucked into the inhabitants there are all basically drugged out on the lotus flower. When they eat it, they just forget about everything else and don't care about anything else. That would be Lotus Island. So the question of whether or not this is a game that just it has a feature that draws us in to keep us engaged in the game, or whether or not it's a soul trap and the lotus is a good Lotus Island is just an analogy for the soul trap. That's one of the questions we find ourselves engaged in. And of course, a good breadcrumb reality will give us more evidence and more support for this too as we start to investigate it. I did find some articles that were interesting, and I don't know if I'm not ready to pull up any images on that, but there were articles out there in the world of psychology that were discussing how our brains are adapted to fill in the gaps and be very interpretive with reality around us, and that the analogies or metaphors we use to approach reality can be a technique for better mental health. So just creating there's basically some research that identifies that if we perceive reality or adapt a certain model to it, our mental health can be improved or diminished based on that. So that's kind of where I've been coming from with this game analogy, that the game analogy has more beneficial results with good and positive mental health versus the soul trap, which can be very discouraging, cause despair. Our models that we use to interpret the world around us have a big impact on our mental health. And that's just what some psychological tests are proving, just to show that people are, and you could Google it if you want to look it up. There's a whole bunch of articles that show how our minds will adapt and our perception of what our reality will affect our disposition and mental health quite a bit. So like I've stated before, I tend to like the game model just because it has more beneficial results, and I feel like there's so many analogies that fit for reality being a game. It's just too good of a one for me to ignore. And every player, of course, can choose their their level of difficulty. They can They can choose it to be a pretty difficult course to run through, or they can choose an easy playthrough. And in both of those, it can still be a learning experience and still have that school learning attribute. One thing about the breadcrumb reality approach is that it is a nice little philosophical idea of how life is designed, and I have found, there's not a scientific experiment that shows breadcrumb reality, but in my truther course of life, in my path, I've discovered this to be true time and time again, where I got sucked into a certain rabbit hole. The more I studied it, the more evidence just seemed to reinforce it, but never to a final conclusion, or never was enough. There was just like always a little bit more given, just taunting me to keep going down that path further and continuing down that path. So I find that to be pretty original from Matt. And, the thing that really interested me in philosophy back in college was that they were trying to, there was an attempt to sort out or sift through what is true and what is not true. From Rene Descartes saying, "I think, therefore I am," to all of the different fallacies and to identify different arguments that have built-in fallacies. That was just all people just attempting to come up with a way to decide, is this true or is this not true? And of course, we're finding out so much of reality's truth is based on our perception of it, on what we decide. A lot of the truth of the way this reality is constructed is based on the way we decide to approach it. Whether you take it from purely a psychological approach and the way our brain interprets the reality around us, or a more metaphysical approach saying that reality is reflecting back to us whatever it is we, are have on the inside, it's reflecting it back. And it's part of the game challenge. All of that just gets reinforced over and over by our own perception. But in the rule set that I'm been writing called the IAC for my game model, it's basically the same thing. It's a filter to run through any idea or question that I have about reality. It filters through whether or not it's going to fit in my perception of it, whether or not it's valid or not valid. And for me, a big part of that rule set has been to decide whether or not a belief or an idea causes me to want to fall into despair or to be encouraged about the future, whether it wants me to be active and productive and creative, or whether it just pulls the opposite direction. So with that rule set, something like nihilism would be rejected because it causes me to not want to participate. My rule set requires that participation in this reality is an essential part of it. And to anything that says I should not participate or give up on it or fall into despair would be rejected because of the rule set I've created for this game, that this game is a game of active participation, of engagement, and creative, positive playthrough. You can create a negative experience for yourself, but the goal of the game, if it's played correctly, is to have a positive and constructive and soul building or soul forging experience. But again, that is designed into the rule set because it's most beneficial to me. Why does this rule set work for deciding truth for me? It's because I said so. It is the rule set that I have created, and it starts with the awareness that I am conscious, and then it lends next to the idea that I am conscious is an idea itself. Ideas exist, and the I is the start of it, and then the Dia, which is the goddess of truth, is the combination of the I and the me, the I and the Dia, which creates these ideas. And these ideas take on a life of their own. They are entities of themselves, and they grow. And when they become larger, we call them beliefs, or we call them convictions. and they can have different sizes and strengths, but the belief and the conviction mixed with our attention and our emotion, when you mix all of those components together, kind of like the ingredients it takes to make a fire. You know, it takes oxygen, it takes chemical change of reaction, it takes a fuel source. If you take our attention and our emotion and our beliefs and you mix it all together, it makes a powerful thing. Some people might be calling that loosh, but that energy is something that has power in and of itself, and that's a very metaphysical approach because I can't prove it necessarily, but it fits my gaming model. That's part of the whole game rule set that I've been creating and building upon. So it starts with I, it goes to ideas, the dia, the creation of the idea, the beliefs, the convictions, the emotions, and the attention all swirl together to make this powerful juice that powers and runs reality itself. And the decision for reality to not be a soul prison and to be more of a game with challenges built in, challenges that push us, challenges that forge us, is just a decision on my part. Maybe somebody can come up with a more definitive proof, but again, our proofs are often found with the breadcrumbs. The more we look, the more we find supporting proof for whatever we're giving our attention to. Anyway, that's it for today. Update on my accident. Injuries are healing well. A lot of people said that they were surprised that I walked away from that with so little damage. And yes, I I will wear my seatbelt. I promised the family I'd start wearing that. I think I stopped wearing it because it was more of a F you to the man. You're not going to tell me what to do. Stupid, I know. But I came through this really pretty unscathed. And I've told a few people about the circumstances that occurred right before this accident and how it fits into the world that I've been living. And it's like this accident was just tailor-made, and it fits so perfectly to the circumstances around it. It's almost laughable, the amount of coincidence that occurred right before this accident and how this answers so many questions in my own life and how it fits so perfectly. I can see how it is part of the design and part of the game. But anyway, I just wanted to share that little update and hope you're having a good week, and God bless.